It's another week, and welcome to the 700 Club. We're delighted to have you with us. We've got some good things for you today. You don't want to miss any of it. Hey, it looks like Congress is on track to give America the big Christmas present that President Trump promised. It's a major tax cut. It's the first major overhaul of the tax code in decades. And now members from the House and Senate will begin working together on a joint committee so they can send a bill to the president for him to sign by the end of the year. It's a big, big deal.
Merry Christmas to all of us.
Merry Christmas, we hope.
Well, at the same time, Special Counsel Robert Mueller is moving ahead with his investigation into Trump's presidential campaign. But Mueller's team faced an embarrassing revelation this weekend as well. Jenna Browder brings us the story from Washington.
It's not clear where the special counsel investigation is going. The White House and some Republicans downplaying former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's guilty plea for lying to the FBI about his conversations with Russia.
That plea agreement does not, to me, indicate that there's very much else there.
Some critics are calling all of this politically motivated, and the president pointed to anti-Trump text messages sent by one FBI official on the special counsel's team. Robert Mueller removed him from the position, but Trump said the FBI's credibility is, quote, in tatters. Despite the criticism, Democrats have a different view.
I think what we're beginning to see is the putting together of a case of obstruction of justice.
Senator Dianne Feinstein telling Meet the Press the obstruction evidence is coming partly from the president's tweets about fired FBI Director James Comey. Trump tweeting over the weekend, "I never asked Comey to stop investigating Flynn." Critics say that tweet goes against Comey's sworn testimony that Trump asked him to ease up on his investigation into Flynn.
I understood him to be saying that what he wanted me to do was drop any investigation connected to Flynn's account of his conversations with the Russians.
But Trump's personal attorney, John Dowd, says he actually wrote the tweet, not the president, and that he wrote it wrong. And on Capitol Hill, all eyes are on a different subject, tax reform. Now that the Senate and House have both passed their tax measures, it's now a matter of working out their differences and agreeing on one final bill. Republicans are confident they can make it happen, and Trump has suggested he might settle for a higher business tax rate, 22% instead of 20%. The president seems to be unconcerned about the special counsel investigation. At the same time, he appears to be on the verge of his biggest legislative accomplishment to date, one that could have major implications for the economy. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thanks, Jenna. Well, our CBN News political correspondent David Brody is with us now. David, there was an FBI agent who apparently was having an affair with a fellow FBI lady, and he was tweeting some rather nasty things about the president. They fired him, and he was on the Mueller team. Could you tell us what you know about that?
Well, there are those anti-Trump texts, as Jenna just pointed out there, but it even goes beyond that, Pat. If you go back a few months ago, look, when Robert Mueller brought in his team, many of them were either donating to the Democratic Party, they were donors potentially to Hillary Clinton's campaign, not campaign, but at times having some ties to Hillary Clinton. And also those lawyers sometimes worked on certain projects involving Hillary Clinton. So you put all of that together, and Donald Trump comes out on Twitter and called it months ago a witch hunt. And indeed, he is sticking by that. And then, of course, we know about this ABC News report, this false report that Brian Ross, their investigative reporter, was suspended for. You put all of that together, and, you know, here goes Donald Trump basically saying to his base, that deplorable base, that this thing has been a witch hunt from the very beginning. It's been a setup. We'll see. Bottom line here, no smoking gun as of this point, Pat, and I think that's the key right now.
Well, what about this Flynn? Well, he pled guilty to lying, but lying about what? And so people are saying that doesn't look like there's any collusion with any Russian involved in the Flynn I guess you call it a prosecution.
Well, right. I mean, lying basically that he did meet with the ambassador, a Russian ambassador. But look, I mean, after that, what do they have exactly? And I think the question then becomes, how much is the White House concerned about what Flynn is going to tell Mueller's team? There's been no sense at all, at least from my White House reporting and White House sources, that they believe Flynn has any of these, quote, goods to deliver to Mueller whatsoever, especially indicting the president of the United States. So we'll see about that. But at this point, there doesn't appear to be anything that Flynn has that would be that smoking gun, Pat.
All right, well, let's go to taxes, which is the big deal for all of us. Are the Republicans expecting any problems as they come to that conference committee?
We'll leave it to the Republican Party to kind of figure this out and maybe not necessarily come to some sort of agreement at the end. Bottom line is they will. They'll get it done. The House and Senate sources that I'm talking to believe this is a fait accompli, that it'll happen, no doubt about it. However, that corporate tax rate we've heard about could indeed jump to 22% rather than 20% that Donald Trump wanted. And that's because there's a lot of reasons for that. But they want to probably add a few more tax breaks back into the bill. And the way to do that is obviously increase the revenue. And the way you increase the revenue is you raise the corporate tax rate. So that could be one thing. Also, Pat, we're going to be watching is the Johnson Amendment. We've heard all about the Johnson Amendment. We've done a lot of reporting on it here on the 700 Club. It is in the House bill. It is not in the Senate bill. Just talking to a Senate source saying it's a 50-50 shot at this point whether or not the Johnson Amendment, which in essence would allow churches and other nonprofits to speak boldly from the pulpit, as we've talked about, and not have a problem from the IRS. Right now, that language is 50-50 at best to get in the final bill.
All right, well, it looks like that's what you're talking about. And so there's no real contentious point in the conference that you can see. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, there's a couple of things. Contentious, it's all relative at this point, Pat, because honestly, this bill most likely is going to pass. I mean, there's nothing major in there. Tinkering with the corporate tax rate, possibly. Also, remember, the House bill actually starts the corporate tax rate at 20% this year, or in 2018. The Senate bill starts that corporate tax rate when it dips from 35 to 20%. It starts in 2019, a year later. So they're going to have to figure that part of it out. But beyond that, no, I think pretty much this is what it is. There is the individual mandate we've heard about, the Obamacare individual mandate. That is in the Senate bill, not in the House bill. Unclear at this point whether or not that will survive. So that'll be a point of contention, too.
Well, it looks like to me if they want to get the maximum impact, they need to start those tax cuts right now, because if they let it go for a year or two, it's not going to have near the same impact that it would if they brought it in right now. Do you think they'll do that?
Well, that's a great point that you make, Pat, because I can tell you that about 9 months ago or so, when we were having this tax reform discussion, actually, it was Obamacare, but we were also talking about tax reform. Some of my House and Senate sources, listen to me, sources were telling me that if they don't get these tax cuts done by November at the very latest, Thanksgiving, you're not going to have enough time to get this thing moving in time for the midterm elections and really get that economic mojo, if you will, humming along. So I think there's a concern that if this is delayed any further, you won't see much of an effect from this tax reform package by the midterms. Having said that, the economy's humming along pretty well as we speak, so we'll see.
All right, one last question. The president came out very strongly for Roy Moore, and he talked down the opponent and said how much he needs that extra vote in the Senate. What do you think about that Alabama race?
Well, the polls are all over the place. We see Doug Jones' opponent up by 3 points. Another poll has Roy Moore up by 6 points. And ultimately, I don't think any of these polls are going to matter. I think there is this silent effect down in Alabama, as you don't want to tell the pollsters exactly what you think because it's been such a toxic issue down there. I think ultimately Roy Moore will probably pull it out based on the terrain in Alabama and based on the fact that this is, I don't want to say died down a little bit, but let's face it, after 2, 3, 4 weeks of this, relatively speaking, it's died down, and we know the big Israel news on the embassy is coming this week. And so you put that and you put Flynn and you put everything else that in Trump world, it's like a roller coaster out there, Pat. The Roy Moore situation may settle down, and that should benefit Roy Moore.
Well, David, thank you. And we look forward to having your second part of your interview with the Vice President, which I think will be very interesting.